Hey guys, good evening. So today we want to look at rational functions. So the standard is about creating equation that describe numbers or relationship. So here we have some objectives, okay? So what I'm gonna do in today's class is to go over the model cycle. Okay, so I want to provide a platform for students to know how to answer word questions. Okay, so here's a situation which I think they will be able to relate to. And I'm going to read it for you quickly. The senior class of Cumberland High School is looking into the possibility of renting Henry's Bowling Alley for senior night celebration. The total cost for renting the building for the evening is $500. Senior night celebration is not intended to be a money-making event, but the organizer do want the event to break even. Each senior is required to buy a ticket to cover the cost of $500. Write and graph a model that gives the average cost per student. So what I would allow my student is to read this situation aloud. Okay, so that's going to be very important. And then I'm going to ask them to, hey, do you see words that seem to be challenging? Uh, for example, or phrase like break even or average cost, we will look at stuff like that. And also, I will ask them if they can relate to the situation. It's celebration. So my students are basically juniors, and I think they have heard of situation where seniors have finished school and they want to do some celebration by having a party. So I feel that they will be able to relate to this question or this situation. Okay, so the model cycle. And I should have mentioned this. I want to give credit to the Maryland State of Department. I got this idea and I am using some of the information from that State Department. Okay, it's very interesting. So we start off with stage one or step one, modeling problem to identify the variable in a situation. So the question I would say is what are the variables in this situation? Okay, so obviously guys are going to look at the X and Y. X mean input and Y means output. And they would have to really describe to me, hey, what does X mean in this situation? So I would say X would mean, hey, number of seniors, okay? And the Y would be, hey, it's costs, okay? And that is per senior, okay? So those are stuff I'm expecting student to say. I would move on to the next stage or the next step where I would ask them to create a representation for the situation. Now, I will go over keywords like average, and I would also give them some test scores and said, hey, what's my average? And to bring out the concept of dividing, okay? So question I would ask is, what is an algebraic representation for this situation? Uh, if they understand the concept of average, and that, hey, this 500 must be shared among all the seniors, then I'm expecting not all of them, but maybe 50% of them to come up with the function y equals 500 over x, okay? Then I will move on to the next stage in the model, okay? Where it said we're going to analyze the representation to draw a conclusion. So question I would ask, what values for these variables make sense in this situation? Okay, so I'm expecting student to say that, hey, the number of people cannot exceed like how many students are there in the senior class, okay? Or the number of people cannot exceed how many people can be held in that building. Okay, so those are some stuff that would make sense. Okay, so they must say that the number of people who purchase a ticket must be represented by a positive integer. So it could not be a negative because that would not make sense, or it could not be zero because that itself would not make sense. So those are some answers that I would be expecting from my students. Okay, so as I said from day one, that I'm giving them a platform so that they will be able to take on word problems, because word problem has always been a big issue for my student. Then I move on to 4, 5, and 6 to interpret results in terms of the original situation. I want to validate in conclusion, reporting conclusion, and reasoning behind them. So I will start off by asking question like, hey, what is the cost of a ticket if we have 50 people? So I'm expecting them to say, hey, it's it's going to be 500 divided by 50. So each person would pay $10, okay? And then I said, what about if it was like 100 people? I'm expecting them to say, hey, if it's 100 people, then they're going to pay $5. So, and then what about if it was like 250? How much would they pay? And I'm expecting to say $2 per senior. What about 500? It's going to be $1. And what about 1,000? And that should be 50 cents. And so I'm going to say after that, I said, as more and more people purchase a ticket, what is happening to the cost per ticket? And clearly, I'm expecting the student to say, "Hey, it's decreasing." Okay. Now I will ask other question: will the cost per person ever reach $0? And then I ask them to explain, which I'm expecting most of them to say no, because the aim is to raise $500. So we cannot have zero. It will never, it will never ever reach zero. And then we will go on and look at the graphical representation, and then we can dig deeper in this lesson. We could talk about the vertical asymptote and the horizontal asymptote. But this is basically a blueprint so that they will be able to answer word problems. Thank you, guys.